right, dude. Let's get this going. So, I guess any questions before we really dive into it?
I don't think so. No. I'm just keen to sort of find out what your take is on my posture and movement.
All that good stuff. Yeah, man. Okay. Are you having any pain right now? Any issues like that, or?
Funnily enough, actually, last week after jiu-jitsu, my back tightened up a lot. I think I put on their lower right side. That's the first time that's happened in, good sort of year or so.
Yeah.
And then mid back as well, like kind of between the shoulder blades has been a bit grumbly as well. And they're two things that will play up kind of semi-frequently over the last kind of 5 or 6 years to differing degrees.
Gotcha. Okay. So just the back in general.
Yeah, shoulders again, like it's never got. Sometimes it's been pretty bad, but I think maybe once. But they've always got a little bit of a pain or discomfort in them as well.
Gotcha. What type of training are you doing? I know you said you have a martial arts like setup. Are you also like strength and conditioning type stuff?
So I'll lift sort of probably do strength work maybe once or twice a week, and then conditioning once or twice a week, and then jiu-jitsu probably 3 or 4 times a week.
Gotcha. All right.
Depending where I'm at with my training.
Gotcha. Okay. So kind of a mix of it all, just typical stuff we're seeing. All right. So we got a little bit of history of some shoulder stuff, low back, mid back, all that good stuff.
Knees, but I know the knees is just traumatic injury.
Traumatic, yeah.
MCLs,
sort
things like that.
Impact with all that.
Yeah. But I think that aside, I always thought that I moved pretty well, but it's interesting since doing Connor's beginner's biomechanics course and kind of going a bit more down the rabbit hole on like the PRI stuff, there's definitely some limitations.
Right. Yeah, man. And, I always like to say too, even with posture, movements, these limitations that we'll see, the body's just doing the best that it can, right? It's taking in all this information, like every every single second that we're alive, right? It's taking in information and it's constantly adapting to the environment around it. So again, just so that way it can save calories, feel safe, all that good stuff. It'll, hold certain muscles tighter. It'll, lock down, it'll build up connective tissue or even bone in certain areas, right? And these like overloading principles, Wolff's law, all that stuff can apply to this.
Sure.
So even if you have limitations at the hips and everything, that might not necessarily be a bad thing, right? It might be what's making you successful at the sport that you're doing and lifting, 100%. All that good stuff. So we always kind of have to ask the question, like, should we fix this?
Yeah. What's the context,
Exactly. So I guess just to start though, and another thing, like in terms of posture, I always try to tell people this, and I probably sound like a broken record, but the posture gives us the big macro view, tells us like how the system's behaving in relation to gravity, but the movements is what really kind of dives into each joint, what's happening there. Like Connor, we'll talk about like the passive range of motion, active range of motion. It's all just testing and seeing how the joint itself is behaving. And then we can sort of apply that to the context of these bigger movements or posture as a whole. So any questions before we dive into it?
I think we're good to go.
Good to go. All right, man. So let's see if I can draw a straight line. There we go. Oh, sort of, maybe. Okay. We'll call that straight, about even, right?
Yeah.
So first things I'm kind of seeing here, we're looking at it. Looks like this hip's just maybe a little bit higher. And that's another thing too about posture assessments. Like camera angles, all this stuff can always be off. So take the stuff with a grain of salt. But it can give us just a little bit of an idea of what could be happening or things that we should be watching for, right?
Yeah.
So right hip looks to just be a bit higher. There's less space between this arm and this arm over here, okay? This shoulder is dropping down a bit, and it looks like it's almost just sort of like behind you.
Yeah, I definitely feel well, I definitely feel twisted in my torso. I can see it when I stand and I look down. I'm kind of rotated one way.
Right, right. Yeah, man. So there's a little twist happening here. There's sort of this crunch. Um, but I would say with what you do for sport and lifting, and you're an active person, right? I don't necessarily think like a lot of folks will probably look at this and say this is like a left AIC pattern.
Hmm.
I would probably say that you're in a progressed stage of that and more biased. Like it's like you've been in a PEC pattern for a bit and then you shift into like a whole nother type of pattern in front of that. And it's like as you're going forward in the gait cycle, you'll see this sort of like present itself in a lot of ways.
Okay.
For folks like you and I who we work out, we do all this stuff, like we want to get to a left AIC if we can.
Right.
that's I mean, that's everyone has that.
Yeah, of course.
But what you'll see is it kind of goes left AIC, like a PEC pattern or that like extension. And
What's
then
the PEC stand for, sorry?
PEC, I can't remember what it actually stands for, but it's essentially just like both hips are just like you're kind of going forward at the hips, right?
Yeah, okay.
Extension to the low back, think you squat and that everything kind of shoots up, right? Like the walking refrigerators, big power lifters, that's like PEC all day.
Right,
But
okay.
what happen is as you go more so forward into your gait, right? Keep going toward like being stuck on your toes in a toe off position. You'll start to see the hips start shifting up or like going into like oblique angles and doing all this stuff. So it's like PEC. You look right here like you are potentially in a like lateral pelvic tilt type deal plus maybe some oblique angles happening. Okay. We're kind of talking a different language than PRI at this point, but again, that's just me looking at you and kind of seeing some of that stuff presenting here as it is. Also, the shape of your arms, like how the arms are like turning out, that tells me that you're pretty far forward. And you can even see like your chest is coming out, you're a bit extended, all that good stuff. Now,
with that recent episode of back pain, I really like when it was at its worst, I could really feel that I was locked into like a lordosis and it was really hard to get out of it. Everything had just seized up.
Right. And that's, I mean, again, it comes with the sport.
Yeah.
It's not even that that's a bad thing. Like, and that's something, it's all about context, right? But what I like to say is that whatever your sport is, or say like you're in the gym, you got to leave that in the gym.
Yeah, no, of course.
Get locked up, lift heavy, right? Do your thing. But then when you get out of there, like we need to reduce neural tone. We need to calm down, find parasympathetic systems, start that recovery process as fast as possible, right? And if we're locked in that extension and that sympathetic tone, all that, and we're going, which is definitely easy for business owners, right? Yep, exactly. So you drink that coffee all the time, constantly thinking about work, you're working out hard, you just get stuck there. So
2.5 kids.
Dude, oh my goodness, exactly. A lot going on. So with that, we're trying to think like, let's just give you some semblance of relaxation in some sort of way. Okay. All right. From the side view, posture is not too bad, right? We saw there's a little bit of a twist happening. Shoulders a little bit forward. This is my like, if this was a perfect world, you might line up with this, but it doesn't have to. Instead, we kind of can go from like the temporalis sphenoid area, and this is more of an idea of where your body weight is going.
Yeah.
Right. See a little bit of a tilt here at the pelvis. So yeah, I mean, you're putting that weight right through the middle of the foot, maybe biasing a little bit into the ball of the foot. Small little thing too is kind of looking at your foot here. We can see that pinky toes starting to roll up a little.
Yep.
And that just tells me you're sort of pronating. you're starting to lift up those pinky toes, right? If you take your hand and you rotate it, your thumb down,
Yep.
that's like pronation,
Yeah,
supination.
yeah.
So you do that, how that pinky starts to stick up.
Yeah.
That's just telling me it looks like you're almost in a bit of a more like a late mid stance, like about to go into toe off.
Sure.
Right. Again, we're just looking at this. We're kind of picking it apart. Sorry to pick. I feel like I'm just picking on you when I'm like talking about
No,
this.
it's fine. Don't worry, man. It's all good.
Yeah. I hope this is helpful for sure.
Yeah, no, it is. It really is.
All right, we'll draw that line there. Now from here, I mean, even before we draw that line, it is interesting. Hold on, maybe you're just, let's see. Yeah, you were settled. Okay. All right, so just looking at the spine, you can kind of see this like tracking toward the left a bit, right? I don't think you have scoliosis or anything, but there's definitely, it's like head is pointed toward the right, rib cage is going left, hips are going right. And then we can even see how the difference in the foot, we start looking at the Achilles. Yeah. This foot turns out, this Achilles is kind of going in a little bit more. And we can see that outside of this foot again, where things are starting to lift up, right? You're rolling through that gait cycle through the foot. You know, it's like out lateral heel, flatten the foot, and then you start to roll up to go onto your toe, and that pinky's coming up. Okay, let's draw a line, see what we get.
When I saw our physio, he said that on my right hip socket is in a different position relative to my left hip socket. So it's kind of, I think it was more lateral than forward. And that this does cause the kind of tilt in my hips, which has caused the slight bend in the spine.
Yeah. And think too, I mean, are you like, when you do your kicks or anything like that, like, are you kicking primarily with the right or the left or?
Oh man, I'm just lying on my back playing guard. This is grappling. It's like wrestling.
Oh, sorry. That's right. Jiu-jitsu.
That's right. Yeah, kicking, he said basically don't kick. He said if you were to start doing something crazy like kickboxing, that would be a really bad idea. And I could probably get on board with that.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know, man. It's always worth a shot. But
I like grappling. I don't like being punched in the face unless it's an accident. So
that's fair. I like that. That's a good way to look at it. But you know, there's could be different things, you know, how you're grappling. If you're like crunching more on that right side, you know, you're using like rectus abdominis on the right, internal, external obliques, things of that nature can sort of, you know, we find ourselves biasing toward one side or another. It just depends. And also like leverage too. Like when you're grappling, you're not doing it. Yeah, it's fun, but trying to win, right? So you're going to do whatever's strongest, whatever gives you the most leverage. And
yeah, 100%.
Right. So you wouldn't just use like the left side for a technique when you know it's not going to be pretty and it could potentially like you lose, right? So
yeah, I mean, if I kind of watched every hour that I've ever grappled, there are really heavy positions that I go to, and I will not go to the opposite side, same position ever. So I'm pretty much lying on my right hand side like all the time, like that's, and I very rarely go on my left hand side.
So, you know, again, when you're just out rolling, right? Like maybe find someone who's not as competitive and just practice. Like that could be something super simple. You just practice going to the left.
Yeah.
You know, just make it sort of a conscious effort to like throw that in, build some volume around that. And that can by itself probably will take care of a good amount of any of this like lateral or like twisting that's occurring.
Yeah.
Makes sense?
Yeah.
And again, like just like if we use kickboxing, for example, like you have someone who's always kicking with the right. Well, it's like, okay, dude, kick with the left sometimes. Like
yeah.
Balance yourself out of it. So okay. But what we're seeing, you can't really see so much of like any lateral tilts occurring at the back. It was more at the front. We saw that right side kind of coming up. But what we can see is that, again, that space here, like you can just see the shoulders, like going over the shoulders. Excuse me, head's going this way. shoulders are going this way, actually kind of downward, right? And this hip is going this way. Can you see that?
Yeah,
Okay.
for sure.
So this isn't a left AIC at all. This is you have like compression, you have all this stuff that's sort of kicking in. You're in more extension because of the sports you do, and that's causing you to translate forward from the heels. You're living in more mid stance to late toe off, or late mid stance to toe off. You're hanging out on the ball of the foot.
Yeah.
Cool.
I thought I wasn't left AIC.
Right.
Well, fit with my twist.
And that's the thing too. Like we gotta, like, don't get me wrong. Pure Eye is amazing. Yeah, I use it, the techniques and like the methodology all the time. But when it comes to folks that are active, we got to look at it a little bit deeper, you know. And like for myself, they treated me like a left AIC for 3 years. I wasn't getting. It was like they just is not clicking, right? It's not making sense at all. If my body's not accepting this, and it was because I've been lifting for 6 years at that time, like heavy, you know, trying to like bodybuilding, all this stuff, and that puts me in a different position than you know, Shelby, who comes in off the street, who just wants to start working out, like has never worked out a day in her life. She's gonna probably be in a left AIC and also be way more pliable.
Yeah. You're going to have several layers of compensation going on top of that.
Exactly. Right. And you got to think too, man, like because of sports, like you start building up like connective tissue. It starts to really like set in. And that, you know, that's where you can even bring up the discussion about fascia and, you know, just all that stuff and like why certain tissues are tight and holding on. Right. Same thing from the side here. Like I said, maybe the foot's just a little different. You like to turn that right foot out.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
So you're attempting to find some internal rotation on this left leg, right? You're trying to find that you're not getting at the hip, so your foot is trying to compensate and turn out. Right. But yeah, and you can probably get some anterior chest wall expansion. I don't know anyone that doesn't need that. So yeah, man. So that's really about the posture stuff. So it gives us an idea.
Yeah.
Right hip's a little hyped. There's sort of an oblique axis occurring here. There's some shifts happening where your head's going right, all that. First suggestion, start grappling, you know, use some techniques toward the left, you know, when you're rolling, doing all your stuff. That'll probably help 50-75% of all this stuff. Okay. In terms of rotation, so what I'm looking for is to see this foot collapse and go into pronation. Sort of the just like systemic rotation that's available at the body. Okay. I'm going to clock you in probably about there.
I think I might go a bit further because I went as far as, and then I realized I wasn't rotating my hips.
Yeah. But you like to let that knee shoot forward to allow you to start like coming on around. So, you know, there's what's available. Yeah, honestly, probably you see how that knee starts.
Yeah.
Which again, this is like a subjective test in a lot of ways. It's like, how do you get that rotation? Right? Like, what do you have to do in order to get everything to rotate? And that knee has to come in, right? That other knee's like, I mean, everything's like kind of going all crazy here.
That's big time on that foot.
Yeah, like and look at like that pinky toe, right? How it's like popping out there. Like that's telling us stuff, man. That's telling us that there's a rotation and a twist occurring and that you're locked up through these hips a bit, right?
I felt very tight that day.
Yeah.
Yeah, the rotations were hard.
Yeah. You can even see how, so here you can get like a straight line though toward the right. And then as you go to the left, you got to like shift your left hip out.
Yeah.
So that just tells me you got tight hips, tight low back. Right?
Yeah, that right side, where I was turning away from then, I've had really weird stuff with that over the years, like burning sort of long, like duration burning pain down the hip, all sorts of weird stuff in that hip over the years.
Yeah, man. It's probably that like right hip coming up a little bit. It does weird stuff. It's like the brachial plexus. You have like all the same kind of stuff down here. That's like your SI joint, all those nerves that come down through the glute, piriformis area. Like those muscles are tight. It's going to give you, that's why people get numbness down their arm. Like that's what sciatica is, right?
Yeah, I'm getting the same thing on my right side. Real loads of numbness in my hands and arm.
Yeah, man. So that right side, you're using it a lot.
Yeah.
Right. And your body's just adapting to what you've been doing for so long. And it's thinking, oh man, like at any point, we're going to start rolling, right?
Yeah.
We have to use this right side. So we're just going to hold it tight. You
Yeah.
know, it's more calorically efficient to orient the body, which is essentially you just lock down a bunch of muscles and then just like shove your pelvis in different directions than it is to have relative motion, which means I need to be able to like contract and relax, contract and relax and all this stuff.
Yeah,
Instead,
sure.
that right side, just like, we're going to hold this and just shove it around. Like it's a lot easier to do that. Right? Especially if you're doing it often.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Toe touch. I'm probably didn't clock you in about there. We saw that you can get lower, but we start to see knees bending a little bit too much about here. And this honestly tells us quite a bit in terms of that upper back. This might be potentially why you're feeling some of these symptoms in the shoulders that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Got some compression there between the shoulder blades, starting even a little bit below the shoulder blades. Like we can kind of draw some lines. I mean, what are there, like 21 vertebrae in the spine, something like that? And you're using like 3. You know what I mean? Like you're just, or at least like these sections of the spine. It's like, man, like, no wonder it feels tight and locked up, right? Like you're only using a couple of points at which you're hinging from. Like, it's not that that's bad. It's just, I'd like to give you more options. Like, let's get everything to kind of globally expand, globally flex, globally extend the way it needs to. Okay. You're using this as like your pillar, right? That you're moving from at all times versus, like what Bruce Lee says, like be like water, right? We want everything to flow and move. You're using this as like your bracing point.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, we need some counter nutation and nutation abilities happening down here. We need to be able to get some air up between the shoulder blades here. That's going to help with the neck, relax this sort of hinge point, all that stuff. Cool.
Sounds good.
And your toe touch should feel better.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I'd also like hammer on some hamstring work.
Yeah, I'm doing a lot of the David Gray stuff at the moment.
Beautiful. Yeah, you're in business. That stuff's good too because it's going to bring you back toward heel strike, like with lifting your heel up. You're going to come all the way back, doing all that good stuff. I would be careful with the foam roller 90-90 hip shifting right now.
Okay.
Because you may just be orienting that pelvis and like kind of dumping it a little too much and getting that rotation more at the back.
Okay. Yeah.
And then you are like getting that relative motion that should occur at the pelvis.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's just something that we can kind of see. I do the same thing. I'm like, this feels great. And my hips are just like going all over.
I can feel a lot of the muscles working, like adductor, glute med, glute max, like when I'm doing it.
Okay. I would, as long as you're it's just something to watch for. Like I said, I'm not even saying to do it. But that's just something I've seen a lot of. And like, I was even talking to like Alex Effer about it like the other day. And it's something we can kind of see.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Pretty easy. But if you're getting good muscle activation, go for it, man. Just take your time with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
Let's see. Oh man, look at that deep squat.
Yeah, super easy.
Definitely, dude. Not bad.
If if I didn't train, I think naturally I'd be more towards the kind of yoga type, like the kind of flexible, can pretty much get in every position.
Yeah,
And then training's kind of layered on top of that and just tightened me up.
exactly. You're definitely narrow, man.
Yeah, yeah.
Narrows is all get out. I'm the same way. I'm narrow, and I have a similar presentation to you. And what we'll see is just it's kind of funny how narrows or gravitate toward like yoga or martial arts or like it's even like a more explosive type work, whereas like the wides are gonna explosive isn't like more like elastic, like athletic type
Sure, like
work.
gymnastics, stuff like that.
Exactly. Or even like football, soccer,
Yeah.
things like that, basketball. Whereas these wides will gravitate toward more, like the powerlifting type sports, strongman, all that, because they're just naturally good at it, right?
Yeah.
Narrows are really good at moving around compression, right? That's why they need compression a lot of the time.
Sure.
But that's, you'll see like a squat and then you zigzag out of it. Like you're trying to avoid that compressive zone, right? When it's real heavy. Whereas like a wide, they hit that zone and what do? They just slow down and they grind through it. They increase that internal rotation, the time that they're there, right? And they're super good at it, which makes them really strong, right?
Yeah.
Like it's funny, like Connor and I are like same height, about the same weight. I think he's maybe got like 3 or 4 pounds on me. And that guy can outlift me every single day of the week. Like he's pulling, squatting like 500, deadlifts like 600, but he's a wide, I'm a narrow.
Yeah.
And it's just like, man, like what the heck? That's crazy. Like if I tried to front squat 500 pounds, I'd snap in half right now.
Yeah.
And it's funny, like seeing us move in comparison to like the difference. Let's see.
Sorry, one second. I just got to put my door up just to let someone in.
Just looking at these really quick.
There we go. Sorry about that.
You're good, man. You okay on time?
Yeah, all good.
You've got pretty good motion at the shoulders, but I think it's fake. I think you're cheating. Right? So like you're getting about like 45-ish, but if we see even do it like on this side, it's like I would probably stop you more about there.
Because the hand's starting to pronate or supinate, sorry.
That and then just watching the shoulder, like as you start to move, it immediately boom, it's just like dumping forward, right? That's the same thing as like a pelvis, like going into an anterior tilt. Like someone squats and when they come up toward the lockout position, they just dump, right? That's similar to what's happening here.
Okay.
So you come up, I would say that's probably more of like what your internal rotation capability is like. Okay. But again, like you get it done. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I would say like you get it done because you compensate into it.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. Like that's another thing. Like narrows are super, super good at compensating and moving around this stuff. We'll find ways to move around that compressive zone that we truly need. We need to slow down and move through it, but we're like, we're like kangaroos, right? We just jump, boom, 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 stay around it. But all this means is that we just need some anterior chest expansion. And this should feel nice and easy, right? You can also test the Apley stretch test, that good old, like stretch your back, like see what your shoulder's doing, see if there's any winging at the shoulder blade. That's a really
the right side, that causes me a lot of pain at the moment. Like all down here, super uncomfortable.
Like I said, you're cheating it, right? It looks pretty, but there's something going on where you're like slamming it. It'd be like your hip impinging, right? Going into that interior capsule, same stuff right here. Yeah. And all that is just you need anterior chest wall expansion. Okay. Let's see. Let's go to, oh yeah. So this is also a like I said, something's going on at the shoulders or you're cheating, and this shows it all. So your shoulder flexion, it's clean up to this point. We start to deviate on the right side. I would say that's probably like, honestly, I would clock you in at about 90.
Okay.
For your shoulder flexion. This is maybe 120-ish. 90 to 120 is probably all you got. Okay. And then as you come up, you start going out.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Right. You're finding that external rotation zone to get out of this. You're having trouble moving through internal rotation to get all the way up. Okay. But yeah, man, we got to get some anterior chest wall expansion, some posterior expansion of the rib cage. Inverted activities are going to be off. Okay.
Right.
Hang upside down on what is it, like the glute ham raise, or that like
45-degree back extension in the picture there.
Yeah, right there, man. Perfect. Like just hang out upside down. I'd even start in different ranges. So like do the first round where you're doing like a low reach at 45 degrees. Breathe there 5 times. Take a break. And then do the next round where you're reaching straight forward, 90 degrees. Breathe there, feel that rib cage expansion. And then you can do another round where you're reaching up overhead. Probably 120.
Yeah.
Keep everything supinated. If you're doing any like prone propulsion drills where you're on your elbows, one foot's against the wall, or for you, honestly, I probably would stay away from bilateral correctives right now.
Yeah, sure.
Just because of that hip hike.
Yeah.
And I would probably stay below 45 degrees of range of motion at the hips. So like no 90-90s.
Okay.
Even like a bear position. Like you can still do like bear crawls and stuff. Just make it sure it's like alternating if you're doing stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you're probably compensating a bit when you get toward 90 degrees.
Sure, yeah.
So if you get to 90 degrees and that hip's up and then you're trying to do a corrective, it's like, what's the point?
Yeah.
So stay below 45 degrees, kind of do some testing there, and then see if you can work your way up toward that 90-degree range.
Of hip flexion.
I'm sorry?
Of hip flexion.
Hip flexion, shoulder flexion.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Like a hook line, low reach.
Yeah.
Palms up. Those are going to be money right now. Yeah. That'd be the furthest extent that I would probably take you in terms of a bilateral corrective right now.
Yeah. And do you think it'd be good to do some kind of left side compressive, right side expansive kind of exercises, but not do them on both sides, just do that side?
Honestly, man, I'd probably give you some like segmental rolling.
Okay.
Right. Where it's like, you're imagining your lower body's paralyzed and you're just like rolling over, doing that each side, and then rolling the lower body. That'll give you a ton of range.
I'm doing it on both sides, reaching both ways.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Because what that's going to do is just get like, it's like walking, right? You're getting compressive forces on one side, expansive on the other. And then you're compressive, expansive, right? So you just alternate back and forth. And that's really what you need right now. Like your system's so locked up here proximally that we need to like wring you out a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
So I'd do some like segmental rolling, hop on this guy, do some like low 45-degree reaches while inverted, breathe there, alternating cross connects. Those would be money. I try to do some things. What you're doing with David Gray's stuff is probably pretty good, but I would watch your toes, because those pinky toes like to come up and you kind of like to grab the ground a bit. You can even see how you're doing it here. See how these toes gripping?
Well, I could bust these out for a bit of a reference. A little Gary Ward aim wedges.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I would even do stuff like put your foot on a yoga block and have your toes just hanging off.
Okay, yeah. So just to get into the balls of the toes a bit better.
Yeah, just let the toes just relax. That's what they need because they're trying to grip the ground for what the arch should be doing.
Sure, yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, 100%.
So if you can let those toes relax, then you're actually like, I'm actually working the arch and I'm getting true pronation and supination through that foot, without the toes like compensating for you.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's just something too. Like if people can't feel a right glute or they can't get their left hamstring, I'm looking right at the feet because those toes are probably like compensating and like locking up the calf and all that stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool. Oh yeah, man. We got to get that better. So yeah, definitely. And like, look at how flat your back gets with that. Like you got to get air below the level of the scapula. You got to get in between. You got to get it above. Like this whole posterior portion of your rib cage needs to pop open.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sideline activities are going to be money for you right now because
Right.
you need anterior posterior expansion first.
Yeah.
And then once you get that, then you can start working on lateral expansion. But yeah, man, it's like you're in a compactor right now. You're just getting pressed from all sides. Okay. Let's see. There was one more. Yeah, let's see these. How'd these feel?
How'd they feel?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, restricted.
Restricted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
TFL always cracks up when I internally rotate my right leg.
Yeah. That means your hips are forward.
Yeah.
You're in late mid stance type stuff. You're a narrow that is living in compression. Not bad. Yeah, man, that'd be really my recommendations.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate that. That's been really interesting. Really interesting.
I mean, does that help?
Yeah, it does a lot. It's always good. Like we've been doing a lot of movement screens and kind of applying similar things to what we've been talking about there. But it's always hard to kind of apply these things to yourself, and so it's good to get like an objective viewpoint on how I'm moving. And probably a lot of it was down the lines of what I was thinking, but it's definitely getting some of the kind of recommendations has been super useful because they're not things that I was doing. So yeah, I really appreciate that. That was really a good experience.
Good. So I'll send you an email. We'll just kind of have some recaps of
Cool.
all this stuff. If you're interested in like any one-on-one services, there'll be some links to that as well. But like I said, recommendations are use those. I really like the wedges for sure.
Yeah.
Do the activity that relax the toes. We got to get you back in terms of gait cycle. Okay. Alternating movements, inverted, and then keep it at probably like 45 degrees of hip flexion and 45 degrees of shoulder flexion for now, for any bilateral correctives.
Sure. Yeah.
So no 90-90s, no quadruped like diamond bears. I'd wait on it. Maybe you could do a diamond, like a one-arm diamond bear, something like that. But I would stick to what you got and where you know you're not going to be like compensating, and then work your way toward 90.
Brilliant. Yeah, appreciate that, Carl.
No problem, man. Cool.
Thanks, man.
You have any other questions?
No. I think that's been really interesting. Yeah, so there's lots of takeaways to think about.
For sure, man.
Cool.
All right, man. Well, I'll catch you later. I'll send you that email, and let me know if you have any questions, and we'll talk via email.
Yeah, will do, man. Cool. Cheers, Kyle.